second Biden administration official has now resigned in protest over Biden's unbridled support for Israel in its war crimes in Gaza. We first saw the Josh Paul, who worked at the State Department, resign over the fact that arms transfers, according to Paul, typically go through a process where the United States, at least in theory, and again, like, we give arms to many countries and we do what we want to do in the end, but there is at least some sort of like process to determine, are these weapons, is this aid going to be used to commit war crimes or to kill innocent civilians?
Yeah, we do have certain, I guess, standards or procedures that Israel doesn't need to follow.
And that was his central claim. He had spent like more than a decade in the State Department and resigned in protest over what he saw was just essentially a blank check to Israel. Now, this is a bit of a different case because this Biden administration official was a political appointee, someone who had worked on the Biden campaign, and he'll speak about this here, a true believer. But this Biden official who resigned, Tariq Habash, is a first-generation Palestinian American. And he was an appointee under Biden in the Department of Education. This is him on Joy Reid's show last night, who I just want to give Joy Reid credit because she was one of the first mainstream MSNBC hosts to really, or like daily MSNBC hosts. Of course, Mehdi Hassan, now out of his show, has been excellent. But, you know, of the nightly anchors, Joy Reid has done an admirable job.
Yeah, as far as I don't, watch MSNBC, but as far as I've seen, she's been there pretty much early on, giving good balance that you don't often see on cable news.
And so she had him, Tariq Habash, on to explain why he made the decision to resign.
What was the final straw in saying, I can't stay here anymore?
You know, Joy, I worked on the administration's agenda for the last 3 years. I volunteered on the campaign, helping shape the education policy agenda, and we've done a lot of really great work. Unfortunately, all of that great work has been completely overshadowed because of the president's complete unwillingness to demand an immediate and permanent ceasefire. And it is creating immense danger for millions of Palestinians in Gaza, but also for Americans here at home.
Yeah, and you cited in your letter some of the sort of restatements of false information that have dehumanized Palestinians. That would include President Biden, who did repeat early on, some things that turned out not to check out, that accused Palestinians of, or accused Hamas of, but also just saying he didn't believe the numbers of Palestinian dead, which the UN believes. How did that feel just as a Palestinian American to hear the president say, I don't believe it?
I mean, it's heartbreaking. It hurts. It is a dehumanizing thing to hear from the president of the United States, someone who you worked so hard to campaign for and elect and support his policies, that, your life is not valuable. Your identity means less than other people's identities, and it's okay that tens of thousands of people who look like you and who have similar backgrounds and heritage are dying and being massacred, and that hurts.
What was the reaction? What reaction did you get from Secretary Cardona when you handed him this letter?
The secretary was extremely understanding. He was very supportive. I think he always talks about putting faith and family first before work. And, he was extremely empathetic. He cares about me. And I appreciate that. I've gotten that type of support from across the administration, from colleagues at the Department of Education, but also colleagues in other areas of the government who have been wanting to speak out and who have been interested in dissenting.
Do you get the sense that there are a lot of other people in the Biden campaign and in the administration who feel the way you do, that are maybe not saying anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are saying something. I think that we've seen hundreds of State Department officials sign on to numerous dissent cables that were leaked. We've seen USAID officials, we've seen White House staff, we've seen interns, we've seen hundreds of officials across the administration from dozens of agencies. This is a pretty commonly held position by a lot of the biggest supporters of the president, and the majority of American voters support a ceasefire, but the president's unwillingness to move on this policy is deafening, and it hurts.
How do you square that? Because Biden really is the empathy guy, right? Empathy is kind of his superpower. It's the thing he's known for more than almost anything else.
Her superpower. It's a little silly, but overall, again, credit. That is at least how Biden brands himself, and I think that that's notable as well. I can't imagine. I think about this all the time. We had a Palestinian American caller call in just 2 days ago, and we've had multiple Palestinian Americans call into the show before to speak about the pain that they're experiencing. And the idea that, one, your tax dollars are going to the slaughter of your ancestors or people that you may actually even know, is heartbreaking in and of itself. And then put yourself in the perspective of somebody like Tariq here, who worked for Biden on the campaign trail, who believed in a kind of like liberal world philosophy at the very least, and who decided that he was going to dedicate his life to working to educate, or working in the Department of Education, to being a public servant in that way. And to have, I'm sure, conversations with his younger colleagues behind the scenes, because we see this generational divide in sympathy for the Palestinian people, and hundreds of other members of the administration sending dissent cables saying, please stop this. And it falling on deaf ears because of how ideological this is for Biden. And I think that it becomes more and more clear by the day as the death toll rises. This was his resignation letter. He posted it on Twitter. And frankly, we need a few more of these officials to go public like this, not just private dissent cables, I think. In places like the UK, there's a tradition of these kind of resignations and protests, and the United States doesn't seem to have that quite yet. So even more credit to Tariq here, but this is what he had to say. Secretary Cardona, I joined the Biden administration nearly 3 years ago to fight for a more just America, to fix the broken student loan system by providing relief to millions of Americans, and to address systemic inequalities across higher education that disproportionately affect undeserved students and families. He explains a little bit about his background as a Palestinian American, blah, 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 condemns things. Maybe we can just go to the second page here, or the bottom at least. Yeah. Over the last 3 months, our government has aided in the indiscriminate violence against Palestinians in Gaza. Over 22,000 civilians killed, thousands buried under rubble, and the vast majority displaced from their homes. Despite claims that Israel's focus is on Hamas, its military actions simultaneously persist across the West Bank, where there is no Hamas governing presence, with hundreds of Palestinians killed in the West Bank. Yeah, this is a lot of what we've discussed.
It's depressing that people have
he has to lay this out.
Have to rehearse basic reality that our media can't really even keep an eye on. West Bank violence is on the rise, and yet we're told this is all about Hamas. Well, of course, that's not Hamas. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I'm sure, an impulse for a lot of people in the administration, one, primarily for their own careers, which makes total sense. People are worried about their own futures. And so they're going to do these kinds of dissent cables and internal displays of discontent in order to preserve their livelihoods, and I completely understand that.
They didn't get to where they are by, taking every opportunity to protest on behalf of Palestine.
Exactly. And that is valid, and I understand. And that's why you have to commend the bravery of those who do speak out and leave. But I do think we're getting to a point now where there needs to be more of this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't really fully, and maybe Matt, you can shine a light on this. In history, the dissent cable, this was a creature of Vietnam, is my understanding, because there were so many people within government that were beginning to express discontent about the United States' war in Vietnam. But
yeah, I feel like there also might have been dissent cables about pulling out of Afghanistan too. So it's it's not a morally perfect
exactly
thing. And
And so I'm just hoping there's a bit of a shift and people begin to realize they can use their voice.
And I think, like, I do think we had callers call in and say they talked to Fetterman staffers and had a very emotional conversation with them. Like, the actual business of running a congressperson's office requires a lot of people who are politically tuned in and who, I mean, some of them are like unrepentant and think like, yeah, you just got to do what it's got to do. And, you know, those people probably are the chief of staff. But a lot of the lower level people, they don't want to support this sort of stuff. So I think calling your representatives and appealing to their office and, you know, this sort of thing should, like, the best argument they have now is like, why is everyone so obsessed with this? Which is like, I mean, just a morally unserious thing to say.